Good morning. First of all, tomorrow we have our second grill out. We're going to have, instead of hot dogs and pizza, or hot dogs and hamburgers, we're going to have hamburgers and pizza. And since we ran out of mac and cheese last time for all the kids, we're getting more mac and cheese this time around. And then what's our toys? What's the games? What's the adult toys for the kids?
So we're going to have...
Let's give her a mic. Give her a mic.
That's not that deep. So we're going to have like a kid's double water slide.
Just holding it looking cool doesn't work.
Right.
There we go.
We are going to have a kids double water slide feature. And then in between those two water slides, there's a bounce house too. So they're going to have a ton of fun. Plus we're going to have cotton candy. So that's fun for the parents trying to put their kids to sleep. So we're really thinking about that, but it's going to be a lot of fun for the kids. I promise.
Thank you. So guys, please come, significant others, family. Love to have you here. We had a great turnout last time, even after delaying that for a week. So why did we move it from Thursday to Wednesday? We had a couple conflicts, couple board events, stuff like that. So love to see you guys. We know tons of people are out taking vacations. The summer's coming to an end. So quick little video. Do we got it teed up? We're gonna hit a video and then we're gonna dive into this. I don't have an obscene amount for this week. I'm really focused on Explosion, which I'm hoping is going to be a great event to bring you a lot of great ideas, guys. The glamorous life of a realtor starts with alcohol. Everybody knows that.
Make your own schedule, right? Bonjour. Tomorrow morning is on Christmas Day. Oh, come on. You get to look at all these amazing houses. Everybody's staging right now. Yeah. Most of them do. The master Bella. I'm sorry, we're not And I love people. I'm a people person. Yeah, we have some exciting news. We're pregnant.
Stop looking at 2-bedroom houses. We have to start looking at 4. But we have the same budget though still.
This house is perfect.
Yes, totally.
But we've only seen 87. I think that we should see some more. It needs to be perfect.
When we did it, we valued the perfect house. This house is at market value. Okay, so they're asking $648,000.
So let's offer them $400,000.
Yeah.
So everything is good. We now have more positions.
You said that you find something wrong with what we're.
What is wrong?
Well, the lights were too bright.
Paint?
I didn't like the doors.
It's just the atmosphere.
And the windows were.
It's really messing with the feng shui.
All those happy people. I don't want to make everybody happy. Hey guys, we're happy. We just want to have. Okay guys, so the process is done. So from now on until closing, make sure that you're not buying any big purchases on the credit. No boat, no vacation, no cars. What do you think of our new barn? Isn't it great? You make cash, right?
We got a wicked 1.5% rating.
Yes. You know what? Honestly, I think you're going to love it. Would you like me to get you my books? Yes, do that. Wait, you have to study all this just to sell houses?
We got to laugh a little, right? We've had a lot of masterminds lately where we've talked about that. Really, the last couple of years, a lot of the fun in real estate's been out because they call you like, I want to see a house. I want to see it now. I want to see, you know, all these now. And you show house after house after house. I do think I was having a conversation this morning with one of the Berkshire Hathaway CEOs down in Florida. And the conversation is, are we in a recession? Are we going in recession? And I don't know if we're in it yet or not, but I think we're clearly heading into a recession. I saw a survey last week. I think I told you guys 2 sales meetings ago, we saw one right that said 88% of Americans think the economy's heading in the wrong direction. They're not feeling good about things. And I said 88% of Americans agree on nothing. So that's a miracle by itself that 88% of Americans would think anything the same. And then I saw I think it was last week that you're starting to see people are putting more money on credit cards now. Some people are saying we're gonna start spending less on groceries and other purchases and stuff like that. So you're seeing trends of people really tightening up because of the overall economy. We're seeing our numbers across home services. They're still trending in the mid-20s in June and July for the number of new pendings across the country versus last year. And I heard yesterday that the numbers are actually below the 2019 numbers, which is pre-COVID numbers for July. So numbers are clearly trending down. Now we know, right? We have this conversation, summer, vacations. Why do we have nobody at sales meetings? People are on vacations, they're doing things with their family, stuff like that. There's always that slowdown there. And so it's tough when we compare things to 20 and 21 because we artificially stimulated the economy by pumping money into it. People became more focused on their houses. So those are great years we're coming off of. So we're still going to have a good year here, but the reality is there is clearly less buyers. The Fed is absolutely positively convinced to get inflation under control. When are they meeting again? Is it tomorrow? The Fed's talking about bumping rates again, another 3/4 of a point. And so there's a lot of confusion, and Kyle, if I get this wrong, pop in here, but the Fed was really dealing with short-term rates. So when people hear that they're going to bump interest rates 3/4% tomorrow, people are like, oh, our long-term mortgage rate's going to go up 3%, 3/4 of a point, 0.75 tomorrow. The answer is no. The long-term interest rates are indirectly related to short-term rates, but they're not directly related. And usually when they say these type of things, the mortgage market will go and bake these things into that thing. But long-term rates are not always related to short-term rates. And so the short-term rates are really to try to slow down spending for businesses, to try to stop the inflation. And the whole key is, how do we get inflation down to a point where incomes are keeping up with it? Because that's the whole problem. We printed so much money, we devalue the dollar 25 to 30%, and incomes are still only going up 3, 4, 5% a year, but inflation is going up, you know, depending on what you're buying, 8 to 20% a year on big ticket items. And so that can't happen. You can't have incomes going up like this and have the cost of living going up like this. I tend to believe that balance of this year, probably most of next year, we're going to see a slowdown. I think this is a good thing. I've said this to you before. History shows us that every 7 to 10 years, you have a correction in the economy. We were probably due for a correction in the economy when COVID hit 2 years ago. We just happened to dump so much money into the economy, it spurred it on and created this and extended this. So if, in my mind, having a correction today over the next year and a half, probably stabilizes things, gets us back to where we are. We're honestly, those of us who've been around for a while, we're in kind of a normal market. My fear as someone leading a real estate organization is, by show of hands, how many of you have never seen a downturn, right? How many of you have started here in the last 10 years? So in some ways, this is going to be better because you're not going to be showing 87 houses or whatever that number is up there. But I do think we're going to have different skill sets today. We've been talking about, in mastermind groups, we've been talking a lot, we've got to make sure we're pricing the property right now. You guys have got to be looking at this way more deeper, analyzing this harder than you have before to make sure we're just not throwing a number on there saying, oh, it's going to sell no matter what. Because before, someone wanted to overprice it, you're like, it's going to sell. We might only get 1 or 2 offers, but it's going to sell, right? Somehow, some way. If they underpriced it, you didn't care also because you're like, well, it's going to get 25 offers. So the market will take it to wherever it needs to. That's not the market we're in right now. You've got to make sure that you're helping them update and stage houses as in every house stage. You would think every house should be staged because that's what really maximizes what you're getting. So I'm doing a BHHS mastermind today for Berkshire Hathaway, and we're talking about a couple things in there. One is I get concerned, and we've talked about this a lot over the last couple of years, is in this craziness over the last couple of years is mental health and well-being is, make sure that you guys are taking time to step back, go do things with your family, go do whatever it is that you need to recharge yourself so you don't have burnout, because it's not going to be fun at all if we have burnout. So make sure that you're doing those type of things but two is you've got to, and we're going to harp on this till we're blue in the face. You've got to be, everyone's like, we've got to be connected more frequently. We've got to be building better relationships. We've got to be showing more value. And I've heard over the last couple of days and all these things I've been sending through for Explosion and this mastermind, people like, I am more focused right now on the concierge services. I hadn't even said the word in 3 of these meetings, and people bring up concierge services. What are we doing to make this simple? What are we doing to make this fun? What are we doing to make this an easy transaction for them? I love hearing those things, because if we do those things, that's the things that people are going to flock to us. Those are the things that are going to give us value, which actually maybe can make this an enjoyable transaction again for everybody. So questions, thoughts? Am I missing something on the economy here?
You're basically an economist now, Vince. You and I agree for once.
Yes. Write this down. Can you write this down? Put this in the HR books. CEO and CFO agree on something. We actually even agreed on the budget. We're both like, oh my God, these guys are crazy.
The only other thing I would add to when you talk about being down in the mid-20s, the one thing that's semi-new is that volume's down just a little bit more than units.
Right. So I was going to get.
The one thing that is interesting is, so Vince basically hit on. I mean, the numbers Vince hit on being down in the mid-20s are accurate, and like I said, I mean, it's fascinating. We actually agree on this. But the one thing is interesting we've seen recently is, like, for July, for example, volume is down just a touch more. This is across home services, so it's not unique to the Omaha market. We're a little different, a little more insulated in some of the coastal markets, as you guys know. But volume is down a touch more than units are, which means declining ASP.
Average sales prices going down.
And that's something. So Vince's CEO mastermind and your BHS mastermind, I'm in a much more fun one than the CFO mastermind with the BHS CFO.
Sitting in
CFOs.
meetings with attorneys and
Right.
CFOs. I've told them that you guys can have all the fun you want. I don't miss those meetings.
It's all personality for an hour, trust me. But we had it's a mix of, companies that are owned and independent franchisees. And so, like, our franchisee from Boston was on there Thursday and talking about their Cape Cod houses and stuff. And he's like, they're not even getting an offers. They're just sitting there and they just sit and they're just racking up days on market. Right. So it's interesting to see kind of that dynamic around the country shifting. And so where it goes, we'll see, but it's a somewhat new thing that we're seeing in the market that we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah. And so here's 2 fundamental shifts. I was going to say, last week was the first time that I started saying and thinking we may possibly in some segments of the market have house prices, because I've been saying house prices are not going to go down, right? You guys are here. House prices are not going down. Why are house prices not going down? I'm going to tell you about DR support here in a second. Because rents keep going up. I've not talked to a single person yet that thinks rents are going down. So there's a relationship between rents, right? If rents keep going up, that does keep pushing house prices up. So rents keep going up, and I've not talked to a single builder in any one of our mastermind groups. Remember, we had that group, 25 people were there, and not one person said, is the cost of new construction going to go down? Those 2 things made me think that they would stay there. But I think some markets got so overinflated. We've talked about lake properties, people got so crazy about lake properties, some of the things. I'm starting to think there are segments that could come down, and that really starts tying into other CEOs. I had not even heard this conversation. Other CEOs that are saying in the resort markets and the upper end markets, those houses are sitting there. And it was just 3-4 weeks ago, people were like in a mastermind group, what's the one segment of the market that you thought's doing as well as it's ever done? And I said, it was the executive $1 million plus market, right? We were doing broker exclusives like popcorn, and we were doing more $1.5 million to $2.5 million houses than we've ever done before. I tend to think that thing might have hit its top, and there is some risk that those house prices might start coming down. I think the people's retirement accounts and the stock market and people looking at their investments coming down is starting to finally take a little bit of a burden on them. So I do think that there is some risk in some segments. I think the higher the end, the more the risk of prices starting to decline a little. There's no crash here, I don't think, you know, the economy has tons of cash. I was talking to a banker 2 nights ago. Jay, where's Jay? Did Jay leave? Did he go home already? Heather says you're at lunch already, Jay. Jay don't go to lunch till 10:30. But over at your house right on Sunday night, we were talking to a banker. She's like, the good news is the financial systems were in havoc, and there was a major crisis in 2008-9. Every banker that I've talked to, 3 banks I've talked to just recently, they're saying we are sitting on more deposits, paying them less than 1% interest. We're sitting in all this cash. We really do need to continue to lend money out. So I think the economy is solid. I think a mild recession probably gets us back in balance. But I think when it comes to pricing, we need to start seeing things differently. You may ask the question, why do we care what's going on in resort markets, on coastal markets, and large metropolitan markets? Because the good news for us in Omaha is all those trends come to us and we can look and try to figure out what they're doing. And they tend to get to us 2, 3, 6 months later, depending on what trend it is. So that would be a trend that we've seen that'll probably hit us here sooner than later, that upper end market may take a little bit of a hit. And, you know, those upper end houses, we've always said for years and years, people buying houses in Linden Estates or Barrington, you buy a house like that, you buy it because you want to raise a family in it, you want to enjoy it, you want to entertain in it, but don't expect you're buying $1 million plus house. You know, we said 10 years ago to make money on a house. Well, the last 2 to 3 years, shit, you could buy $1 million house and it was appreciating fairly rapidly. We may get back to that point where buy it for personal reasons to live in it, to enjoy it otherwise. So anything else? All right. So what I was going to say on D.R. Horton is I had a very interesting conversation. And when I was talking to the CEO this morning down in one of the Florida brokers, I'd asked him if he'd seen this before because I had not seen this in Omaha before, which kind of ties into what we just talked about is Ryan Shores and Josh and I developed, and they're going to start closing next month. It's called The Trails. It's 85 lots out by the new Elkhorn West High School. D.R. Horton had bought all those, and they were going to take those down over 2.5 years to build houses out there. In our original conversation, those were going to be low 3s to low 4s. They came to us 2 weeks ago and said, what kind of discount will you give us if we accelerate and buy all of those lots next month? And we're like, well, we don't really want all of them next month. We'd like for taxes to shove some of that into next year. So we've agreed to basically, I'm not going to give you the full details, but basically close to half of them being closed next month and the balance of them closed the first quarter of next year. And what they're going to do is they're going to fast track these. They're going to build all those houses as fast as they can. And then they're going to rent them out. And I guess they've done this in other parts of the country. And they look at this from my perspective, it's something I could wrap my arms around, as an apartment complex. Because we're sitting there talking about what's rents, what's rent increases, what's cap rates. And cap rate is the percent. If you paid cash for it at a 5% cap rate, you're going to get a 5% return. We can go into that. We'll get Fred to go into that for you later. And then I'm like, so you're just going to build them, rent them, and hold them, or build them, rent them, and sell them? And they're like, no, we're going to build them, rent them, and sell them. And that we think we can get a 4 to 5 cap rate for this, that we think rents are going to continue to go up. They asked us what we thought those houses would rent for. We said $2,750 to $3,000. They said those numbers work great. So they can build the houses, rent the houses, and then sell them to an institutional investor for more money than they can buy them and sell them to individuals.
What kind of house?
They're going to be, well, they'll be the same type. They're going to be $300,000 houses. So they're going to, yeah, they bought all 85 lots. And that's the reason we didn't care. So, but I can see that. And then, so I talked to this guy in Florida, and my understanding, this takes place in other parts of the country more than one would expect. And I was just watching a video that Christy sent me yesterday that really talks about this. One of the things that happens is we can only build so many houses, right? We only have the manpower and the ability to build so many houses at a time. We've got more of these builders and institutional investors going in there and doing this. And what happens is those 85 houses get bought by a REIT, and they never get put into the market for a person to buy as an individual homeowner. So why there's a chunk of house, that's the reason this light bulb went off my head. I'm like, this kind of continues to create a problem for a shortage of houses for individual homeowners, right? So it was just an interesting conversation to me. We believe for us, this becomes a win. We get all of our risk off the table and get our money sooner. And we basically got rid of our holding costs on our specials. So this was simple math to us to get the money sooner and reduce the holding costs. But I don't know if any of you had heard that before, but it comes hand in hand with people are paying premiums for apartments across the country. And I just got a report from, I have a little bit of departments down in Exarban with Bert Hancock. And his report is, I got you next, brother. I got you next. Let's get a mic out to Big Rick. He's got some words of wisdom to say. I have no clue what it's going to be, but I know it's going to be good. What the hell was I saying? In Exarban, I got a report. They're like, we continue to say 98% full. Basically, it's anytime that someone doesn't renew, it's the 2% is just cleaning the carpets, repainting it, and it leases out immediately. And it's like, we just keep bumping rates and bumping rates and bumping rates. It's amazing to me how rents just continue to go up. And so seeing this for a whole subdivision, right? Fred talks to you guys all the time about go buy houses, own them, rent them. You're going to make this, you're going to have a lot of passive income and net worth over time. But to see a whole neighborhood taken down really threw me a curve, because that really is 85 houses that I thought, the market thought, is going to be there for $300,000 to $400,000, right? For individuals to go buy. That really is now going to be all renters. That's never going to come into the market. So why that labor is building those houses, that's 85 houses not getting built somewhere else. So that if that continues to happen, we continue to have a shortage of houses for sale. Rents continue to go up or stay where they're at, and new construction costs continues to not come down. Even as I just said a second ago, if there's segments of the market, the upper market, that maybe adjusts down a little bit, it's just hard to see how prices are going to come down in the meat and the potatoes in the 2 to 450 price range. Tell me what you got to say. I'm excited to hear this. Turn it on. Can't hear him. Can't hear him. I'm colorblind. Don't ask me. Let's make sure they all have batteries for explosion.
Hello. Well, I just know that Legacy's doing this here. So
Legacy's doing the same thing.
they're doing it in Lincoln, and they're also doing it down in Bellevue. There's a subdivision. They're doing the same. They're doing a whole subdivision. It's all going to be rentals.
So
Everyone.
how many houses are they doing?
200. I mean, they're big. They're 200.
So they're doing like
200
what Hearthstone,
subdivisions.
those that
I
have
mean-
been around for a long time. Remember, Hearthstone built all of those down in Bellevue, like 800, 900 houses like that.
Yeah.
That's the last time I'd heard that, but that was really related to the base, the military, and doing that for them, not for individuals to come in there. So they're doing the exact same thing where they're renting them to individuals.
Yeah.
Then are they turning and flipping those to an
I think
investor?
he's going to keep them. I think he's keeping them for himself or whatever.
So that's not good when you tell me Legacy and DR Horton, two of the four
So
or
the
five biggest builders we have in that lower price range are
the
doing
first
them
one
to
that they
rent
did,
versus-
I read this a while back, but
You can read?
Yeah, I did. Well, I walk around with. the
Will
Wall
you
Street
teach
Journal
me?
and just read the headlines. But they did it in Dallas was the first big one, and it was like a 300 or 400 house thing, and they sold it to a private equity group. That was the first one that DR Horton did, or whatever that I read about it or whatever. It was quite a while back, but anyway,
Yeah.
Shampoo's getting into all that with
Yeah, so
same thing.
couple of my,
And two, my understanding is what Steve's doing is Steve Shampoo is he's taking just kind of the lots that would be hard to sell. And he's
And making
retaining
those-
a percentage of them.
so he's not doing a whole.
Not doing a
subdivision.
whole subdivision. He's retaining a certain percentage of these. He's going to hold those as rentals and sell the rest behind.
So,
That-
so
that's
the
kinda-
interesting question to me there is if I'm a home buyer, right, is because Heather's question up front was on DR Hortons, are they the only builder in the subdivision?
You think they'd have to start putting like restrictive covenants in these subdivisions?
Well, it depends on if you develop your own development, you write your own covenants. You can say I can rent 100.
I'm saying moving forward, if this is what's gonna be happening, these.
So this is a different conversation because that's different than what I understand for Rick is. So if what Scott is saying is correct and they're doing some rentals and some for sale, I would think that your buyer would want to know okay, I'm gonna own this house, it's next to rentals. Now, as long as I guess they're building all the same type of houses, which they probably are,
It's
They
it's
probably
just
should-
all
they
it's
probably
just a
should
legacy
they
development,
probably
right?
should hold their value there.
Right.
The bottom line is, we've said here for the last 3 years, we have not built enough houses the last dozen years. This throws a completely different curve into it. We're still not building enough houses, but now a chunk of the houses we're building are not going to sell to families. So that's a wrench that I've just not seen in Omaha outside of the Hearthstone thing 15 years ago, 12 years ago, whenever that was. So that was just interesting to me. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I don't know what it means, other than it does appear to me that it probably relates to, we'll continue to have a shortage of houses as we continue to move forward, because the population is continuing to grow in the country. Do I have notes? I know Scott's talking about something, so I'll bring Scott up.
Storm and then.
Storm. So in who's dealt with closings or dealing with closings talking because of the storm that came through here in the last month? Okay. And also we have, I apologize, Integrity Termites got breakfast out there, guys. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Lobster tails, filet, and champagne. Dom and Vuv, guys, get back there. Make sure you enjoy.
So the most important thing to understand is on storms is it's already taken care of in the purchase agreement. Paragraph 26 already provides what you do out the storm. You don't need an addendum unless you want to do something a little different from what's already in there.
But we were
Right. And we love more paperwork. I'm confused.
and complication.
And complications. So paragraph 26 basically says this: hey, look, if we put this property under contract, a storm comes along, it causes damage, seller's responsible for fixing it. Seller has to make an insurance claim, and the repairs have to be made prior to closing. And then, of course, sometimes that's not possible. It says, and if the repairs can't be made prior to closing, then seller is required to put time and a half into an escrow account until those repairs are made. That's just the standard operating procedure under the purchase agreement that everyone's agreed to without doing one more thing. That is, it's already handled. The thing that comes into play is sometimes people want to, change it, or they want to have the right to take assignment of the claim. It's very clear under Nebraska law. The Nebraska Supreme Court has said that the insurance company cannot prevent you from assigning a claim to somebody else. So that is, you're going to be able to assign that claim. And so if the seller wants to assign their pending insurance claim to the buyer, that by law will automatically happen. And all the insurance company can ask for is you sign a certain form that they prepare that says, here's the assignment of the claim. And then the storm addendums, I mean, we have lots of provisions in there as to what happens if, the repairs can't be made prior to closing, how we're going to handle that. Is it just going to be assignment of the claim? Is the seller going to put money into escrow? What happens if the seller doesn't have enough money? What if the property isn't insured? That's kind of where these storm addendums come into. And we have one that has, certain selections. But again, you don't even need to get to there if you just want to hold on to paragraph 26 of the purchase agreement that already provides what happens to these situations.
Questions, thoughts, issues?
Julie?
What if an insurance company says, I'm not transferring it to the buyer?
Repeat the
Yeah.
question. So
So if
I understand it's Nebraska law, where can I get a hold of that to tell all?
it's Valley Boys Roofing case against State Farm, actually, I'll send it to you. So I mean, now here's the catch.
Get the law. You'll send it.
Certain insurance companies might be out of state. Someone might have a policy through an out-of-state insurance company, and they might not be applying Nebraska law. But yeah, State Farm got hit hard for trying to prevent assignments, and the Nebraska Supreme Court came out and said, no, you can't stop them from assigning it. So if they're doing it, they're violating what would be Nebraska law and opening themselves up to bad faith damages actually under the Insurance Practices Act.
Of what year? What was that insurance?
The case,
No, no.
I think
I
it's
just played.
95. 95 is the insurance statute. The case, I think, was like
In 1995, the statute of 173,542.
762-120.
Always
11.
act confident when you don't know.
Yeah.
That seller that says I'm not going to call my insurance company because I don't think I have.
Right. So
Repeat that question, because that's a really good question. That does happen. Yes.
What happens if?
Scott's got the mic. I'll let Mike.
so basically,
This
Lisa's
is Scott.
question is,
You are Lisa. This is Scott.
what about the seller who doesn't want to cooperate, right? Again, amazingly enough, paragraph 26 talks about this. which is the buyer has a right to send out an independent insurance adjuster to make sure that, to see if there is damage. And then there is, that requires the seller to do it. What happens if the seller doesn't do it? Well, then the seller's breaching the contract. And at that point, you
Right, they're
basically
breaching
have
that 95
Yeah.
insurance policy.
95
rule.
insurance.
Yeah. Mhm.
Unclear Practices Act.
Yeah.
Right. And remember, I've had this discussion a lot. People go, well, these contracts don't mean anything because the seller can just not, well, right. That's what a breach of a contract is. You know, when the seller says, I'm not going to do what the contract says, they're breaching the contract. And I know you don't like the answer. The answer is unfortunately, they're going to breach it. You got to hire an attorney, you got to sue, and you got to incur costs to do that. And so that's the problem. There's no,
See,
no
attorneys
one-
wrote laws
You're right.
hoping that people would breach them.
Well, there's just
That's
no-
how they get paid.
there's just no group of thugs that you can hire to go over and beat them in the ankles for not following the terms of the contract. So all you can do is just threaten them and sue them if you need to. Those are the repercussions. And, you know, if they lose, they're out whatever it costs to defend this action and whatever the damages are that are part of it. And then Heather, you wanted to talk about, yes,
Yeah, I was gonna say, which one of you are gonna talk about that?
yeah, you
Okay.
guys might remember we have inspections in the contract.
We are, by
This
the way,
is
show
new.
of hands, many more houses are getting inspections today, right, than we have in 3 years. So that's a good thing. It really was bothersome to me, buyers going and buying houses, paying above appraised price, paying the seller's closing costs, not having an inspection, the furnace or air conditioner goes out day one. So I think personally, a normal market where a buyer gets the right to have an inspection is a very good thing.
Does everyone know what a home inspection is?
Yes, those of you new.
Let's start
Mike,
there.
Mike, have you done one of those before?
There's a guy with a flashlight and a ladder. He probably has a pickup. It's probably not a new pickup based off of the lack of home inspections. So the clause, again,
Attorneys can be funny.
in that purchase agreement, some of the funniest drunk attorneys you'll ever meet. The purchase agreement already provides what to do in this. And it basically says, we've got a clause that says this is just the standard language within the purchase agreement. It says, if you elect the right to do a home inspection or home inspections, it says you got 14 days to get them all done. 14 days, they can do whatever they want. They can look at it. They're not limited. They can do whatever they want. They can have a radon inspection. They can have a, mold inspection. They have the sewer scope, whatever they want. They got 14 days. And after those inspections, if the buyer doesn't send anything over to the seller, buyer's buying it as is. Buyer's just moving forward with the sale. If the buyer sends something back to the seller and it says, hey, seller, we want you to do this, then they've got a full 18-day period. So basically 4 more days after the 14 days is up to reach an agreement between buyer and seller. And if they don't reach an agreement, nothing is put together, then at that point, contract terminates. So those are the 2 dates you got to count. 14 days to get all your stuff in and sent over to the buyer or to the seller. And then they've got that period of time, those 4 days, could be 10 days based off of how quickly the buyer responds back to the seller, but a maximum of 18 days to come to an agreement. And if they don't come to the agreement, contract terminates.
And Scott, a lot of people are like, well, no, I don't want to give 14 days because they're in the old world of
You
what you
can-
had. So as part of the contract, the seller clearly has the right to counter back saying, no, the inspection's got to be done. You can shorten that time frame, negotiating back and forth between buyers and sellers.
Right. It's, again, it's important to read the contract and know what you are having people sign because it has lots of clauses in there. And those clauses say what happens. And so it's important to know what's in there. And again, another important thing is just read some addendums that people are sending over. I sent an email out about this yesterday. And the addendum basically just said, hey, look, buyer can walk away for the earnest deposit. The seller can't do anything about it except accept that earnest deposit. So if you got a $500 earnest deposit, they can walk away 2 minutes before closing and say, sorry, keep the $500, and they're limited. Jennifer.
So what if the seller wants to know what all inspections they're having? Because we had this come up the other day. You're just waiting. You get that back. You didn't know they had a radon. You didn't know they had structural. You didn't know they had whatever. And
Right.
now all of a sudden you've got to explain to this seller, well, they had radon, they had sewer scope, they had this.
Yeah, and we have a kind of a document out there, an addendum that you can do.
That is only a guy.
Right, it's only a guy. The only really way to lock this.
You
thing
guys
down-
notice Heather disagrees with us all the time.
Right, so
So repeat the
So
question.
you
for those
gotta,
of
yeah, it's like, how does the seller know what inspections are going to be done? And I mean, what you got to kind of think about it is that it's sort of what we call in commercial transactions, a due diligence clause. And the due diligence clause basically says, you know what, buyer, you do whatever you want. You
Right.
figure out whether this property is right for you. We don't care. You just do it. And then you come back to us. Either you say you're moving forward or we renegotiate. That's what this clause is supposed to represent.
And basically, when this was done, that was what kind of was references. The commercial due diligence clause is kind of the intent of this, which
And
is
that's how,
come for free, any inspection you type of want. So you almost need to, in my mind, sorry to cut you off, you almost need to tell the seller up front, you know, they have the right to do any inspections they want. So if they have one inspection, then they want to send out a roofer or a plumber or electrician, they have the right per the contract
within that
to
period
do
of time.
any of those
right.
contracts. So I think as a listing agent, you should be setting that expectation with the seller up front as to just, we don't know, maybe just one. And I think you can say, in all likelihood, most people are going to hire one inspection company that's going to come and do boom, 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 unless something that stands out to them. You know, then they'll maybe send out a roofer or a plumber. But typically, one person will come out, do this, unless something stands out there where they call out an additional person to look at something.
Yeah.
Or you can
The-
counter the offer saying that this is the only inspection to be had.
Right.
Or you can counter the offer and say, this is the only inspection to be had, and that buyer walks and buys another house.
Right.
Well, that was the funny thing, right? 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when we put this language out, that was what everyone said. It's like, yeah, but if I counter it and say you can only do these things, maybe that buyer, you know, won't do it. And then I didn't hear anything more about that for 2 years because no one was allowed to get an inspection. And so now the market's changed and now
Yeah.
we're back into that. But as Heather points out, you can do whatever you want. You can limit them. You can say you can only do a home house inspection. You can tell them it's only for informational purposes only. We're back to what's called negotiating.
So is it for the seller, it's better to tighten up that time frame?
I would think, the question is it better for the seller to tighten up that time frame? I would say, yeah, 14 days seems a bit long to me, especially if I've got a seller that's got a time frame to get into another house. I would try to shorten that up personally.
And
I don't think home inspectors are that crazy busy that they can't get in there within a week personally.
But then the other thing is you got to tighten up both of them because we've had situations where it tightened it up to 5 days for the buyer.
But you lost the
And
18
then
days.
the seller had 18 days to respond to, 18 full days after the contract was entered into. Other questions?
Anything else, Scott? I think you got a call, didn't like your answer, and then they didn't like my answer.
That's right. They
From,
called Kyle and they loved it.
got it. Hey, do what you want. And it was back to, so I want us to get this again. It was a conversation on house sold for X. The appraisal
Yeah.
came in $45,000 low,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken.
And
And
they had a
the verbiage-
$35,000.
the
gap.
verbiage was very loose
Right.
on what could, even according to the agent,
Yep.
the verbiage was very loose. It said in there, if the contract said buyer will pay appraised price plus 25,000.
I think it was
I don't
25.
remember. I think it was 25,000. It's a $1 million house. And so the seller signed that contract and so now the seller's like, well, I'm not going to sell it for $45,000 less. It did, and so they didn't use our verbiage, which I wish they would have used, right? Where it basically says, I don't know what my exact verbiage is, but basically the intent is that in the event the home does not appraise, buyer agrees to pay appraised price plus, in this case, $25,000. If you use the verbiage we have, the seller is now obligated
Right.
to take that. If you put loose verbiage in there, attorneys love this because you can go get an attorney on both sides of this case and probably argue this.
Right.
And that's a hot
Which
mess.
is what occurred, right? The
And-
broker they went to their attorney said, nope, they got to sell it for that.
Right, so you have two attorneys right now,
25,000.
both saying, well, no, this is so unclear, you can go both ways. The second part of that verbiage that we'll send out here is, I said, to protect the seller, counter back. If the first verbiage for the buyers and they're protecting the buyer, saying the sellers has to accept it, counter back saying, we only accept it as long as the house appraises at X.
Right.
And we're netting X. So we've gave verbiage, guys. And I did tell this person, maybe you should show up at a sales meeting or a mastermind. Okay, so they called all three of us. Okay. I mean, I thought my
And Brian, he talked to Brian too.
times with him was, oh my God. He told me how smart you guys were. So please, please, please. We have verbiage for almost anything. If we don't have verbiage, we have an attorney. So give us and we'll scribble some verbiage up. But if there's any confusion, And the moral of the story on that was loose verbiage, right? That has no clarity, that can be interpreted by two different attorneys, two different ways. It creates problems down the line, which all of a sudden makes a transaction that's not enjoyable by anybody.
What is the gist of that? Was there no floor for the seller?
It just basically said one thing, right? It said buyer can pay $25,000 over the appraisal. That's it. It didn't say, and seller has to
It
accept
didn't say the
that.
seller has to accept
It
it.
doesn't say that the seller had to, the seller had no language in there that said we don't have to accept it. Didn't say that would have to be renegotiated if it's over that. It was just very, very open. And so, we've had situations where we've had buyers who've shoved that down on sellers. We've had sellers who fought back. It's just you got to say what you really want to happen in all those scenarios. And yeah, it takes a little more writing than you might want to, but even in open is
Right now,
still out
I don't
there.
think nothing's happened so
Yeah.
far. There's two attorneys involved. That's what's happened.
We'll let you know in 6 months.
Yeah. So, yes.
Question on the home inspection, if you have the inspection on day 2, negotiate your repairs by day 5, can day 10 roll around and the buyer say, I think I need a sewer stove?
Yes. Yeah. So
The way
Bill's
under the
question
current
is
verbiage.
Bill's question is, hey, if buyer has their home inspection and they put something together and send it over to the seller, and then they decide within the same period of time, hey, we might want to do something else. I think the only thing that would cap it, I think, is the seller agreed already. You basically put it to that. So going back would probably be to that.
We got a question outside. And then Maggie, you want to come up because I'm gonna have you roll next.
Going outside now?
Yes.
Who cares?
Hi. We had a situation where the buyer closed on the house and they were allowing the seller an extended period of time to get.
Lost him. Can't hear you.
Oh.
If you can hear us, we can. Did that battery go out?
Okay.
Thank you.
We had a situation where a buyer bought a house. The seller had a ton of stuff in the house and on the property itself. They closed and the buyer was willing to give the seller like 5 months to get stuff off. And that was all spelled out in the contract. But the one thing that wasn't spelled out is what happened to personal property left after the day of possession. So what happens then? Because now there's a lawsuit pending because the buyer ended up giving the seller another 8 days, went to possess the property on the date that was agreed upon in the contract, and the seller still had a bunch of stuff everywhere. So he said, okay, another 8 days. And this was on text, obviously, because the property had closed and all the verbiage in the contract was already done. But now the buyer's getting rid of the seller's stuff and the seller is suing the buyer for getting rid of his stuff.
Yeah, there's actually a law. It's called the Landlord Tenant Personal Property Act.
What year?
And no, it's not 92. I'm gonna go 95 again. Probably modified in 08. Because they had to up the number.
Good
It used to be
attorney
if it was
knows
under
this shit.
500, you can throw it around. Now it's 2000. Yeah, so there's actually a law that says, you can't, even if a seller in that case leaves a bunch of shit behind, you can't just throw it away or keep it or sell it on eBay. There's actually a law as to how you have to do it, and it requires you to give notice to the buyer. And it's in that case, the seller. Give notice to the seller. It says, hey, you have to pick this stuff up in this period of time. And if you don't, then we're going to conduct a sale. And you have to follow that statutory procedure. To
Jay,
do
didn't
it
we
right.
have to deal with that a lot in foreclosures back in the day? Remember? We always had to go and stick it in storage, and they were all paranoid about this thing.
Yeah, the nice thing is what you could do is you could stick it in storage and then you can charge them the cost of storing it and moving it. So that.
But
would be part
here's
of the
let me say one thing, because I can't remember. Sometime last week I had a conversation with somebody, and the agent did not want to put in verbiage saying what happens in the event. Anytime you have something, it was based on a closing. The closing had to be done by this date specifically, period. But the seller, the buyer was scared to say, well, in the event that it's not done by this, well, what's the damages? I'm like, well, I said in my mind, because my recommendation is if it does not close, because you're telling me this date is really, really important. It's got to be closed by the 30th of the month. I said, what I'd like to do is say, if in the event it's not closed by the 30th of the month, that there'll be a per diem penalty of X dollars every day, their days after. But the buyer's agent wasn't comfortable. So we as agents sometimes create a little bit of issues on this. Well, I want to tell them it's got to be done by here and we'll agree to that. And because it's agreed to, it's all gonna be okay. If you put a penalty in there, you've got a lot more meat. Is that right? To say, listen, here's your damages.
We
You-
never
'cause
want
now
to
you-
use the
now
term
you plead-
penalty, by the way. It's illegal.
Okay, well, what do you do?
You can use late fees.
One 1874.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a late fee.
You can use a late fee or a liquidated damages provision is what you call in that.
Liquidated
situation.
damage
You
is
can't
better
say penalty.
verbiage, actually. But if you put that in there, you're gonna have a lot better chance, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean,
And you're saying it's a per diem of X. You're not using the words.
again, the clearer you are, the better off you are. I mean, Heather and I, we really love all the post occupancy agreements everyone has done over the last year. Those really are going well. Everyone's on the same page, no disagreements. Thank you. Don't get 10 of those calls per day. Part of it too is at a certain level, you aren't lawyers. It's not your job to fix.
How many
these-
knows that?
Yeah,
Right?
who's aware
Who
of that?
knows they're not an attorney?
Part of it is you sometimes have to get out of the way, get out of the middle. You got to, I'm sorry, this is a legal dispute between the parties regarding this post occupancy agreement. I am a real estate agent. My job is to help you buy and sell real estate and get it to closing. This is outside of that scope, and I can't help you resolve this at a certain level. That you might need to go talk to an attorney because.
But I would caveat that as a real estate agent, try to say, let's create clarity when we're writing something up.
Well, that's on the front end, right? I'm
Okay,
talking
thank
about
you.
everything
Yeah,
going wrong on the
yes.
back end because we didn't do that.
Maggie, come on up. So are we done, Scott? Yes.
Thanks.
We continue to see, guys, remember since this wars broke out, phishing has always been an issue, but hacking and phishing is at historic highs. She's going to give another example of something that could have what did go wrong, but luckily
Yeah.
got fixed.
Yeah,
We
so
need you to please pay attention to this.
I know we get a million phishing emails and it sounds like we're beating a dead horse, but it happens. And so Friday night, text message from an agent said, hey, how do I get this guy off my computer? And I'm like, what guy? So yeah, right. So she, it was a scam PayPal thing that the person had clicked on. Then they installed remote software onto her computer, and she was like on the phone with the people at the same time, and she's going, what are you doing? And then the person on the phone went into this, hey, I'm gonna hold your family for ransom. It's a weird situation. But he was the he.
It would have worked if Maggie wouldn't have gotten involved.
I know, right? It was close. So
They're like, which kid do you want?
yeah, which kid? Can I give one of mine? No. So she or the hacker person, I'm not going to assume it was a dude. Hacker person was browsing out to Western Union to start wiring money and transferring money. She's like, what do I do? I said, turn your computer off. Because immediately that breaks any sort of internet connection. So what it was a phishing email. Looked like it was from PayPal. She uses PayPal. She clicked on it. She was like, well, this doesn't make sense. And then they called and then they said, hey, we have this compromise in your PayPal account. Here, we'll help you fix it. So they're never going to do that. They aren't that nice. PayPal, Microsoft, Google, all those places, they just aren't. So that was one.
And dual authentication is not going to help you there
No, because the user
because they're
clicked.
already in your computer.
They're already on your computer.
So that's the reason. Attachments or links.
Attachments or links. Now, I will say, if you call our IT department and they're like, hey, we can help you, go to this website or I'm going to send you a link, and you're talking to Josh or Rick or Dion, that's legit. But just if you're worried about it, just ask. Shoot somebody a text, shoot them an email. I mean, in this case, I think the agent knew right away, well, after the threats started and they were browsing out to Western Union, that there was a problem.
Right after they
And
sent
so they shut it down.
$29,000.
Yeah.
They're like, I only got
Yeah.
5,000 left.
I'm out. The other thing that we saw happen, the other one, and this was at a sister company, but it was in Lincoln, spoofed email message from the title company. So it looks like it's legit. Again, title company talks to husband, husband's bringing a cashier's check. Wife gets the email, says they're gonna wire the funds. She wires $167,000 to a dude in Erie,
That was in
Pennsylvania.
last week, right?
This was last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this scenario, we got really lucky because the buyer then picks up the phone and called the person at the title company, said, hey, I just want to confirm you got the wire for our closing on Friday. And the lady on the phone goes, we don't even have final instructions yet. Where did you wire this? So they went to the bank in Omaha to try to recall it. It was a smaller bank. They didn't know what to do. We ended up calling the bank in Erie, Pennsylvania and flagging the account for fraud. And then the FBI called back and they got involved. So we had 3 FBI agents that.
But usually that money's
that
gone
called.
within an hour.
It's definitely within 24.
Yeah.
It's almost always within an hour.
Because when we had ATS, when we lost that $213,000, it was within hours. That money was gone. Mutual of Omaha to, it might have been US Bank to
Somewhere overseas.
Timbuktu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in this scenario, that bank happened to be closing within 5 minutes, or else I think that money probably would have been gone. So within a day, they did have their money back. Everybody on either side of that figured it out. So my advice there is, again, the agent on the other side, it could have been, it wasn't one of our agents. But a couple weeks before closing, a week before closing, just remind your clients how they are bringing funds to the closing.
And the most
it
dangerous
should be
thing
a
is
check.
to take email instructions.
Yeah.
Because that's the most likely place that someone's going to
Yep.
find that and hack you.
So just-
Gina knows I'm psychotic. I make the banker call me every time, anytime something's being wired. I said, text me or call me. Do not wire money from an email.
So I know it doesn't seem like it can happen, but it does. And again, the summer is really, really tough because everybody's in a hurry. There's a lot more closings. Everybody's on different vacations and you're kind of hitting holidays where there's less people and less eyes on what's happening. So we see an increase basically Memorial Day through Labor Day.
Now, we
So-
have everybody set up on our website for multi-factor or dual
Yes.
authentic, but they should do that on Google and any other.
I would
Can
put
you
it
walk
on
through
your
that real
personal
quick with them?
email accounts. Like, so in Gmail, you can set up a 2-step authentication or a multi-factor authentication where it's like, hey, and I've had this happen to my account where I wake up in the morning and it's like, somebody from Cambodia is trying to log into your Gmail account. Is it you? And it's like, no, but it stops that from logging in. So on your personal accounts, turn that on. I have it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Gmail. We have it on our bank account, so I can never log in. All of those things, all those personal things, we have that set up just because it is so crazy. And it happens. It happens. So, and it's not even you typed your password into a phishing attempt and now they have it. There's like some program that's out there just trying to hack passwords and they've got your password combinations. So sorry to be scary.
We are trying to scare you because we just continue to see too many things where hundreds of thousands, and there was a case not long ago, a couple $1 million disappeared because of that. And so the number one thing that I see is wiring instructions through an email. Don't do it.
And
All right.
ask questions. We're here to help.
Maggie,
Yes.
so the PayPal situation, if you just switch off the computer, that would have cut the time.
Yeah, so in that situation, she powered off her computer. She brought it into us on Monday and we removed the remote access software. And she was not, I was like, don't use your computer all weekend. Because once she turns that back on, you don't know what that remote software is. We don't know what's notifying the person on the other end that computer's now active. So we removed it.
Second thing for a link and thing, you're much more apt to make a mistake on a phone than you are on a computer.
Correct.
So try not to snap onto those attachments on your phone.
Yeah, so in this
Which in my
scenario,
case is my computer.
I think she opened it on her phone. When we opened the attachment on the computer, I saw the 15 or 20 other title company instructions that had been spoofed that clearly have been working. It's from the same Gmail account that we've had happen here. So I don't know if the FBI is close. I don't know if this helped them get closer. But it's the same. You open the attachment and like 15 title company logos transfer, and then it lands on the one that you're opening. That's the one that they just sent you. It's crazy. So.
Yeah. I send them to Maggie all the time. I'm like, is this for real or not? Yes.
So if they're on your computer like that, does it bypass the verification because it then takes the GPS of your computer and it recognizes it as
A known device. Yep. Because like, so, yeah.
Right. So that's what
Yeah.
the link in the attachment is a major problem. When you clicked on that and it's not right. Huh? I don't know. Where's security? Call security up here. Usually it's Mike Blackman's the only guy wearing a tie around this place. Brian,
What's this anti-tie?
we don't care. We love you all. So, yes.
If you drop that device, can you go to your laptop and go back into it, or you should just keep away from your emails and everything? I'm just going back to the PayPal. She's saying
Oh.
use your desktop. and
Yeah,
then
no.
open your
It's only on the computer that it was installed on. So you can go use another computer. In this case, the agent said, I'll just use my phone all weekend. She was scared. So, and that was my
yes,
advice.
last question.
So then you log out of everything. If
So if
you're,
it's Apple and you got your iPad connected, your phone connected, they're in.
then you're changing your, and that's kind of what we went through. We would go through that.
When I
Like,
sent
what
you
are you all
last-
logged into?
Last
And then we go
night,
through it.
just Twitter had a hack that had
Data
affected
breach.
54 point some million people. So on, if you are active on Twitter, probably go change your password today.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Pop in here. First of all, Christy, can you stand up? Christy is moving on up.
Oh, yeah.
Right? She's going to be moving away from us. We're going to definitely miss her, but she's got a great job opportunity in the medical staffing world, right? To do something that a friend of hers is doing. So we wish her the best.
I'm
She,
gonna-
thank God, told Gina and Carrie, and they didn't tell me when I was out of town. So that's a big strike against the two of them. But shut up. Get the muzzle. But when she came back, leaving on great terms, we've loved having her here. And she was, thank God, she said, I told them I have to stay through Explosion. I just can't do that. So we so appreciate that and wish her nothing but the best as she moves forward in her life. So
also, because I will be a healthcare recruiter, if you have nurses that love to travel, I would
starting
love,
before she starts.
I would love to talk to these folks.
So thank you. You're good. So yeah, so we will have, you're sold out. We'll have 200 people, top agents from around the country floating around here for those who've not been here before for Explosion, which will primarily be in here, sometimes up in Mike Pettit's office, sometime in Adam Briley's office for breakout sessions. We're not doing roundtables, so there'll be less conference rooms being used than last time. But, I appreciate maybe everyone just cleaning up a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed, the carpets are in the process of being cleaned. About half the building's been cleaned, half the building's not been cleaned. We redid the tile floors and the grout on the first floor. It's been almost 2 years since we did that. That was really overdue. And in the bathrooms, paint over the last week has been done. So we're trying to refresh the place up. But, to me, I remember when I first said 7 years ago that I was going to have this, a couple top agents like, Vince, people are not going to pay to come to Omaha, Nebraska for a real estate convention. I'm like, I actually think they will. And I think we've proven that they are. And actually we, are getting more people that want to come than we have room for them. So we're excited to have them here. We will have a sales meeting. Our people here are really panelists, and we really kind of focus on if you're in the top 25 in the network to ask you to be a panelist. And then we've got, I think, a total of 27 or 28 panelists from around the country. Christy Butnick, the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, will be here as a guest speaker. Jimmy Burgess, that many of you know, who's one of the brokers down in Florida, will be here. A very charismatic guy. He helps me run the Rethink Council. So we're honored. And I think that you all, this is a reflection of everybody here, that there is an attraction to come to Omaha to be part of this event. And the excitement that we've seen over the last couple of days of people like, I am so excited. I love being there. I think it's the best real estate conference anywhere. So
don't worry, you'll
get
get
in the top 25 next year. and you'll be
everyone
there.
here everyone here will get recordings. So
Well, they're mainly panelists. I asked everyone in the top 25 to be a panelist, but we will have panelists that were here. Okay. 2 weeks from now, I really would ask you to please come, because I will tell you, as we're going through my prep, I did four Zoom classes yesterday with all the panelists. They're going to say some good stuff, They're going to remind you some stuff that we forgot about doing that we need to do again. And they're going to bring up some new stuff that they're doing that we've not heard of. So please, please, please show up 2 weeks from now.
I believe it's
for a
August
sales
9th.
meeting.
August 9th is
August 9th.
the
yes.
next sales meeting.
We do not have a helicopter coming in. I did get in trouble. Who saw the helicopter last year? I thought it was pretty badass personally. Well, because the people across the street got mad because I guess some of the mulch blew. People got, I'm like, I would think you think that's cool, but we're going to do something cool, but no helicopters. Good guy. Good guy.
Okay, so Jen Bennett was the last good guy. She couldn't be here, and the person she's awarding is also not here. And I'm sorry, the way she described it, I can't really make it suspenseful, so it's going to narrow it down real quick. But here's what Jen has to say about the winner. This hardworking mama of soon to be 2 has been a friend since before she was in the industry. She is always there for me to bend an ear about current real estate market conditions, new construction ideas, and generally how to survive as a working mom. Her work ethic is inspiring, and her unconditional friendship and support inside and outside of the business is something I'm lucky to have and to lean on. May all God's blessings be on her growing family. And the winner is Jennifer Torzon.
So welcome her, and we'll get that to her. Guys, tomorrow night, family, friends, kids, we're going to have a lot of fun. We want you out here. Hopefully the weather's cooperative, but I don't know what the weather's supposed to be like tomorrow. Again, plenty of beer, pop, water. Yes, one last thing. Go ahead.
Thank you. I will. I'm very passionate about mental health awareness, and I do a lot of work with mental illness and mentally challenged people that are having problems. I don't know if any of you know this, but we have 911 for emergencies. Last week, we now have 988 for mental emergencies. If you know anybody that wants to commit suicide, or anybody who has mentally ill, depression, anything at all that you can help them with, please guide them to 988. The call will be answered just like that, as if you call 911. 988, brand new, just went into effect last week. Okay.
Guys, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's keep rolling. Plenty of opportunities out there, guys.